If you only had $10,000, where should you put it right now at the end of 2025 to make the highest return on your investment? Not in stocks, not in crypto. Put it into real estate because it kicks butt compared to the other two, and here's why. Real estate investing takes advantage of the wealth building triangle over here on the whiteboard, which I'll go over in just a second. If you're just starting out on your investment journey, you need a vehicle that multiplies your money every few years, where $1 becomes $2, $2 becomes $4, $4 becomes $8, etc. Because if you settled for just a 10% return on your $10,000, that would be only $1,000 per year, which is never going to really make you wealthy. Though there are some stocks and crypto coins that might be able to double your money within a year, the risk of losing all of your money in that stock or crypto coin outweighs the benefits of making a quick buck, or that you'll get lucky in that pick. True wealth multipliers will double your money every few years or so, and there are only two main wealth multipliers out there. The first is business, and the second one is real estate. And both of them multiply every single dollar that you put in. Now let me go ahead and explain the wealth triangle behind me. There are three components of the wealth building triangle. And each component, when used correctly, will build generational wealth for you and your family. For example, I can start like a side hustle or a business and trade in my time for money. Or I can put that money into real estate investing and then let time build up the wealth from that real estate asset for me. Or maybe I invest my time studying a new subject like coding and then getting a high income job later on. So for example, one of my friends did this. She took a coding boot camp, which was a 6-month program, and it cost about $29,000, and she had no prior coding experience. After she finished that boot camp, just 2 months afterwards, she was hired on by a tech startup that paid her over 6 figures. And that was because she put this money into her education. So she now makes over $100,000 per year on that initial $29,000 versus just maybe about $3,000 per year return if she invested in the stock market with a 10% return. So that's a ROI of about 400% or 4 times the money she invested versus just a 10% return in stocks or crypto. And that's why investing in yourself is always one of the best investments that you can make. So the second key component of the wealth building triangle is money. You can borrow money to make more money. A lot of hedge funds do this, for example. This is called borrowing other people's money to invest it. Some people, like you and me, for example, might borrow money from a relative or a parent to buy a property that cash flows $1,500 a month. I did this deal with my dad, for instance, where I borrowed $23,000 from him because I was in a tough spot. I didn't have enough money to make some repairs on my houses. And then I used some of that money to build an extra bedroom at the house. And I gave him the rent for that bedroom for the rest of his life. So this deal gave me the opportunity to help build his wealth as well and create a win-win situation. Not only did I relieve the stress that I was experiencing, but I was also able to support my dad's retirement at the same time. Finally, the third key component of wealth building on the wealth building triangle is strategy. This happens to be one of my favorites because if you can pick a smart strategy, it can really accelerate your investment portfolio. Think about people who got into drop shipping and they took advantage of trending items and made a lot of sales and quickly built up a lot of wealth. For real estate investing, one of the most highly profitable strategies, and is one of my favorite strategies, I use it and I have my clients use it as well, is student housing, where you take one house and then you divide it up into multiple bedrooms, maybe 5, 6, or even 7 bedrooms, and then rent out by the bedroom to double the rental income on that property. Because you're making a lot more cash flow, this model is super scalable to multiple properties. In fact, some of my clients, for instance, have used this strategy to buy 4 rentals and actually cover all of their expenses and have financial freedom. So it's a very powerful strategy. Other people, they might rent out nearby a hospital and then rent out by the bedroom to travel nurses or healthcare professionals. Now, since at the beginning, we don't have a whole lot of money, remember this video is about if you only had $10,000, what we're going to do is focus on the other two key components, which is your time and your strategy. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, there are three main areas in real estate investing that take advantage of the time and strategy components of the wealth building triangle. The first way to get the highest return on your investment in real estate investing is to invest in yourself. Now, sometimes this is free. Let's say you work under a contractor or handyman for a bit to learn some of the trade. And then later on, maybe you do handyman jobs yourself. But most times you have to pay money to invest in your education, of course. So one way you could invest in your real estate education is hiring a real estate coach or a real estate mentor. Or you can take a real estate course. Just make sure that you have a very specific goal that you want to achieve at the end of this. Maybe you want to get into single family home investing or multifamily, or you want to flip projects. Each area is a little bit different. And if you're not sure what you want to do in real estate investing, what I recommend doing is read up on it by buying some books. So a couple books that I recommend is The Real Estate Millionaire Investor by Gary Keller. Another great one is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And if you want to get into rental investing, look up the book on rental property investing by Brandon Turner. Those are all real estate investing books that helped me really understand real estate investing and make sure that I avoid expensive mistakes. Another way you can invest in your education is study for the real estate agent license exam and get your real estate agent license. That way you can sell properties. And the average salary for a real estate agent right now in 2025 is about $100,000, so six figures. However, the data is a little bit skewed because the Bureau of Labor Statistics says the median income for a real estate agent is about $56,000. So what you have is some really good realtors who perform very well, which shifts the curve so that the average salary is $100,000. Finally, the last option is you can go to a trade school and pay for that education to become a plumber, electrician, an HVAC technician. A lot of times you'll make a high return on that investment because those jobs are in really high demand right now. And man, it's so expensive nowadays to hire a plumber and an electrician. They get paid very well. Finally, when trying to decide how to best spend your time, you have to discover what we call your unique ability. This is basically like a superpower. So for me, it was studying mathematics, statistics, and investing. I was just like really hyper obsessed with that. And in college, I actually borrowed my colleague's calculus notes, and he looked at me funny. He was like, "You're not taking calculus. Why do you even need these notes?" And I told him, well, I'm going to go ahead and take the final exam to pass out of the class, which is called challenge by examination. So I took the final exam, I passed it with a 97%, and it turned out to be a higher score than my colleague. This obsession with math and statistics later translated into me developing these deal analysis calculators to accurately find if a deal is going to make me cash flow on a property or not. Now, here's the thing. I used to see this weakness of mine as a problem. A lot of people were making fun of me in high school, for instance, when I was sitting out at lunch hour studying the SAT while everyone else were socializing. And I actually got bullied for it as well. But it turns out this so-called weakness turned out to be one of my greater strengths and led to my success later on in life. So go ahead and ask yourself this. What perceived weakness do you have that might be one of your biggest strengths if you just turn it on its head? In fact, what you can do is ask AI, ask ChatGPT, how can this weakness that I have end up being one of my biggest strengths? How can I use this weakness to my advantage? Next, the second highest return on your investment for your initial $10,000 is house hacking. House hacking means you live in one room and then you rent out the other bedrooms to housemates. And this allows you to potentially live for free, meaning your biggest expense, which is your housing costs, is totally covered. That gives you some more breathing room in terms of your finances. And so what I did is I bought this house in Sacramento, California, and rented out to Sacramento State students. Now, one question that I get a lot and what I actually worried about at the beginning is, who are going to be my housemates? And what if I don't get along with them? One of the biggest things I worried about is if I get housemates who throw wild parties, who smoke at my house, who trash my house, etc. And so what I did to go around that is I did kind of like a mini interview for any prospective tenant. And I'll ask them things like, what are their hobbies? What field do they work in? Are they a student? What type of housing environment are they looking for? And I basically chose people who were just like me. And that turned out really great. Nowadays, I enjoy actually talking with my housemates about the latest video game that's just been released, or maybe what city to visit when I go on vacation, what food to eat, some of the better restaurants that just came out, etc. Now, there are a couple other advantages to house hacking, not just that you live for free, but there's also appreciation that you get on the house, which is just the value of the house going up over time. So let's say you bought a $300,000 house and it appreciates 7% per year because it's in a pretty decent neighborhood. 7% per year on a $300,000 house is $21,000 per year that you're making, that you're building your wealth just by sitting on that property. Imagine just having 5 of those properties. That means you're making $105,000 every single year, basically 6 figures annually just by sitting on the property. So that's why I really love house hacking. The other advantage is you only need to put a 3 to 3.5% down payment on a house hack because you're actually living at the property, which allows you to put that lower down payment. So 3% down on a $300,000 property is only $9,000. Now you might ask me, Ryan, what about other expenses? Well, there's closing costs, for instance. And one thing that I do for closing costs, a little trick I use, is I will tell the seller, hey, let's raise the price of the property $10,000. But then you give me that $10,000 back as seller credit towards closing costs, so I don't have to come out of pocket on closing costs as much. And then the seller gets the same amount at the end of the day because I just raised it $10K and had them give me that $10K back. So there's no real reason why they wouldn't agree to that. And then let's say you have to furnish the property as well. One thing you can do is open up a 0% APR credit card. And that means usually for the first 12 months, you don't have to pay interest on any balances that you owe on that credit card. However, what you have to do is set up an auto payment every month for the minimum payment that has to be made. And again, this is not to be perceived as financial advice. And make sure you do your own research on this. The most important thing though is if you open up this 0% APR business credit card, you want to make sure you pay it off with the rental income and the cash flow that you're getting from that rental as soon as possible, because if that 0% APR expires, you're going to be looking at a 20-30% APR, which is definitely not what you want. Now, the third highest return on your investment for initial $10,000 is to do what people call rental arbitrage, where you rent out a house. Let's say you rent it out for $2,000 a month, and then you rent out individual bedrooms. Let's say you rent out 4 bedrooms for $800 per bedroom. That is $3,200 a month. So your rental income is $3,200 a month, and then you pay rent of $2,000 a month, which means you profit $1,200 a month. Now, you have to be very careful with this strategy. You have to be patient about finding the right house to do this, preferably a house that has multiple bedrooms so that you can rent out per bedroom. But what you want to do to build in a margin of safety is calculate how much it would cost you if one person stopped paying their rent, if 1 or 2 people stopped paying the rent. So ideally, if one person stops paying the rent, you still have a sizable profit and cash flow. So you're not relying on one person tanking your business, right? And what's cool about arbitrage is you can also put the house on Airbnb as well, and that's called Airbnb arbitrage, where you're renting it out on a nightly basis. Now, of course, all of this has to be discussed and agreed upon with the landlord in writing on a contract before you actually do this, but you just explain to the landlord exactly what you're going to do. Maybe you pay a little bit above what standard market rent is in order to do this. If I were to do this right now, I would look for houses with extra bonus rooms, maybe an office room, extra family room, etc. So I have multiple opportunities to make this work. Now, both house hacking and rental arbitrage get your feet wet in real estate investing. But if I were to choose between the two, I would choose house hacking because you get that appreciation, you have your tenants covering your mortgage payment and then paying down your loan for you. And so that's what I would do if I had only $10,000 to invest. Hopefully this video really opened up your eyes. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with your friends or others who are struggling with getting started in real estate investing. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on next week's video.